I was thinking hosting and not exactly before the hosting. So, tell you, long week. Okay. Okay. So, working. Pum, pum, pum.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our discussion on the Wisconsin Idea Under Attack, hosted by the IMT here in Madison. My name is Liam, a member of the IMT here, and I'm really excited to have the opportunity to introduce this discussion, which is a pretty important topic right now, in the light of COVID, but also in the years going up to it. The university system in Wisconsin, throughout the country, throughout the world, has been suffering austerity, and the people who've had to pay for that are the workers and the students. And it puts a huge dent in this idea, this notion that anybody from a working class background can work hard, get a great education, and then be successful under capitalism. We see that just really doesn't hold up water. And we're really excited to bring you that discussion today. But first, a few housekeeping points. We are a part of the International Marxist Tendency, a international Marxist tendency. We're active in over 40 countries. In the US, our section is Socialist Revolution. We have a website, socialistrevolution.org. And a paper that you can subscribe to. If you go to the website, you can subscribe to the paper there. You can also get in contact with us here at Madison at imtmadison.org. And you can get information there to sign up for our newsletter, to join our organization, and to get in touch with us to discuss these ideas more and to find out more about events like this we're doing in the future. Another thing you can do is you can sign up for our Facebook and YouTube pages. That way you'll get notified whenever we go live for more of these discussions in the future. In order to keep doing this work, we rely on viewers and contributors like you to help financially fund the cause of the revolution. So if you are interested in helping us maintain our organization and help build the party and help build the cause of socialism, you can donate to Venmo at Ivy Geertz. That is IVYGEERTS, and that should be showing up on the screen right now. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker today, whose name is Alex. Some have called him the Lenin of America, that being me. But in all seriousness, Alex has been a comrade with the IMT for a long time, helped us build our branch in Madison, and has been a disciplined Marxist for years, for generations, has a connection with the labor movement in Madison. And He was born and grew up in Spain, and he's been in Wisconsin for a long time now, and he's here to talk to us about Marxist ideas, and I'm really excited to hear what he has to say. So without any further ado, I will go ahead and bring you on, Alex, whenever you are ready. Thank you, everybody, for coming to the discussion. Looking forward to talking to you after. Alex, you are still muted.
Hello. Sorry about that. My name is Alex. Thank you for the great intervention, Liang. And my job today is to organize a little bit of discussion that we want to have after the event about the future of UW Madison, and the whole system. And also within the context of the crisis of capitalism, the ideas that we are very proud in this state, like the Wisconsin idea, but also which way forward for thousands of workers and students, and also many people who have the hopes or they would like to be able to go to higher education in this country, in this state, and happily it's becoming more of an obstacle, more difficult. I will spend about 15 to 20 minutes to do that, and then just kind of like to frame a little bit the discussion at the most. But it's a very broad topic it touches many aspects of our lives here in the city of Madison, and we know there's a lot of perspective. So we hope that you can join us on Zoom, which we will post the link later, and continue to talk and see where we are with all these things. So without further ado, so to speak, here is a little bit what we think as Marxists, what's going on and what it needs to be done. Well, first we have to acknowledge, especially in Madison, this is very important. There are 25,000 employees in one way or another that depend of the UW Madison. Is also a driver for housing, a driver for hospitality jobs, a driver also for many startups and research and technology companies that have been mushroomed a little bit, so to speak, around campus. So definitely what happened in the future of UW Madison and UW system, it touches the houses and the livelihoods of more than half, we would say, largely of the working class, the working families of Madison. So we think as Marxists that we need to take this conversation as something that we own, because it affects us greatly, right? Even though obviously the politicians and the capitalists trying to sell us the idea that that's something that we have very little control on. In reality, we should fight to have control and be sure that this is institution that help us and it's in good use. It's also very important too because Wisconsin have a large a legacy, a large proudness, let's say, on the progressive times at the beginning of last century with Bob LaFollette and others. And one of the exponentials actually of this progressive movement was the Wisconsin idea, which putting it into very simplified way is this idea that the state and UW, the system, should be put on the interest of most of the people of Wisconsin, right? This idea that it should not only benefit elite, the industrial class or the intelligentsia, or, the intellectuals, but actually in every dairy farm of Wisconsin, every neighborhood, working class, poor or not, they should be benefiting one way or another of having those institutions. That should be an interest both from the state to finance higher education, for instance, in this case, but in exchange become a tool of social equalizer and a social progressiveness, right? That's for sure something that after 100 years we still defending it. When we say the Wisconsin idea still resonates and people are willing to fight for it. Now, the problem is that these progressive ideals, which I will comment a little bit later, right, where they're coming from, and what was the source, and what they're trying to accomplish. But the reality is that since then, there's been a constant attack to the Wisconsin idea. There's been a constant attack to the public education, the public entity in Wisconsin, and most specifically the UW system, the UW Madison, and the UW system. There's been a decrease of the investment on part of the state. Currently, the state is the third force of investment on the budget with a 14%. And actually, out of the 400 millions that UW system receive, about 200 actually are what is called committed, meaning that it cannot be used for anything that the system needs, but it has a name to it, right? It needs to be done or spent in some categories, which means that the UW system is, at least from the money that's coming from the state, is heavily politicized, right? Whoever the party, especially the Republican Party now, they use that money not to create a empowering, social equalizer, progressive force in society with UW, but where on contrary, transform the UW system into a subsidiary for the interests of the capitalists, right? For the things that are good only for their friends and their system and ideas. And even though when we say the Wisconsin ideas is this marriage, as you may, between a public institution and the state backing and the effects into the community, into Wisconsin, the reality is that for a good time now, the Wisconsin state is doing the opposite. In fact, the first investor of UW is the federal government, where with a 29% of the budget, and most of that money actually comes from comparatively award grants and projects that are also heavily politicized. They are also heavily based on the needs of the capitalist class, the state, the military, and so on, but they are not coming from the interests of the Wisconsinites and the working class in Wisconsin, right? Followed to the federal government investment, we have the student investment, actually the tuition and the fees, which is a 20%, was 642 millions. And then in third place, very close, is actually the private donors and the grants, and we say 18% of 582 millions. And here is the problem, right? It doesn't matter how loud we say that we like the Wisconsin idea and how proud we are of the legacy of having a public, very good quality public higher education in Wisconsin. The reality is that a good percentage of the money that it comes to the UW system, it have a tie, right? It's the way that is making the system more catered to the interests of those private grants, to these political grants coming from the state and the federal government, that it's making all these changes and really empty the promise, avoiding the promise that the UW system could be a force of progress as it was initially conceived, or at least during the progressive movement, it was heavily amplified. Now, what are the effects of this, right? Well, what we see is that there's being a fundamental change of focus from the UW, coming from exactly this idea, at least initially, of using knowledge and reason to improve things. Some of the best things, the best legislation that happened at the beginning of last year, the last century, they're still enjoying today, like unemployment, social security, tax reform, control of big capital, or some of those legislation actually come from Wisconsin, come from the progressive movement, and you can put the authors of many of those legislations down to the professors and the professionals in UW system. So even nationally, the UW system play a role to bring this idea that we can do something with the state that actually can level the balance a little bit, right? But since then, what we have is two things. One, they've been introduced this idea of efficiency, this idea that running the university like a corporation, running university as a individual revenue unit that it has to be in competition with other universities. So as a token of that, we spend more money, for instance, trying to appeal private donors and corporations, and also it's rock stars, so-called professors and researchers, where that money goes there just to artificially, if you may, increase the value of the system. And yet things that are way more important, like having enough researchers, enough professors and workers, that they are able to expand the need for more materials, for more classes, more programs, not only in Madison, but also many campuses all around Wisconsin, that actually can bring many of the humanities and science programs that are needed for the working class kids all over the state. That has actually been reduced. They've been selected and filtered and canceled with the interest to make it more efficient, to make it more commercial, to make it more elitist, really, and voiding all that promise of social progress, right? Another qualifier of this is how actually the UW system is declining in many factors. In terms of revenue, for instance, it's falling sharply in number of researchers. Also went from like 5,000 to 6,000 the last 10 years. The average spending per student also it's been declining relatively to the last 10 years. And the more important thing is that the Republicans try to dress up this full attack to the UW system, this privatization and deteriorating of the progressive part of this public entity, by doing a popular move of freeze the tuition, which we support as Marxists. We support not only to free the tuition of UW, but actually make it free for all the students, especially those of the working class that they need it the most. And at the end, it's us, the working class, that creates the wealth that the rich and the state have to actually invest and build this kind of entities. It should be ours to start with. But the reality is that this free tuition have not addressed the problem that many kids, many young people in this state cannot afford to come to UW system. It's very expensive. I will give the numbers a little later. But at contrary, because now there is less money coming from tuition, and there is not a increase of investment from the state, from the Wisconsin state, what we have is a UW system that is even less able to give grants, is less able to facilitate and get close this education for those who need it. And actually the quality and the offer of UW is declining too. That is definitely only serving the interests of the capitalists, that they more and more see UW Madison and UW as a system as basically their lab, their workshop, to get people trained on the jobs that they need, like programmers or things like that, engineers, with a very low cost to them. So trying to reduce the cost of it on the expenses of the workers. Many of the workers in UW actually, they saw the living conditions decrease sharply because the attacks of Act 10 of Scott Walker, weakening the unions and the bargaining capacity of the workers in Wisconsin, especially in UW. But more importantly, freezing the tuition and also decreasing relatively the investment of Wisconsin State, and make the whole system more vulnerable for grants and for private money. And with that, getting this private management and full attack to the interests of the workers, which, by the way, is the first employer in Madison with 25,000 people, as I was saying before. It's really something that affects us greatly. Another number, or another way to see this is, well, first, obviously, all these attacks have not helped for reducing the student debt of many, and also people who cannot continue to keep studying UW because it becomes intolerable amount of debt. But also, there's more people, there's more problems to renew teachers, to have teachers. There's more teachers without tenure. They are constantly and last-minute erosion budgets. They're trying to change many programs and making everything very, very difficult. Now, for us as Marxists, we don't think the Wisconsin idea is something that it was a very good idea if it works. But we have to come back to it. We think that it's actually social elements, social and historical factors why we have a very good public higher education in Wisconsin. Why we're still thinking, many of us, that the Wisconsin idea as a proposal, right, as kind of ambition or aspiration still makes sense, or even more than ever, right? This idea that these resources can benefit the livelihoods of everybody and not only the richest one, I think resonates even today more than 100 years ago. But also, we have to understand that 100 years ago, the rapid development of capitalism and industrial capitalism, the explosion and expansion of big capital, put very difficult problems on the table. Democracy was corrupted already in the late of 1800s and early 1900s with a heavy-handed intervention for the big industrial monopolies and forces, economic forces out there. And actually, the progressive ideas comes actually to respond to that, right? Like they have this idea that if you have reason and good legislation, the state could somehow fence off the tentacles, right? The intervention, the influence of the big capital, and therefore try to get some of this prosperity, some of this economy that is booming, and get some benefits for most of the population, not always the same one. 100 years ago, obviously, this relationship and tension is even worse. We are not on the expansion of capitalism, and let alone on a progressive phase of it, meaning that the system in somehow is healthy and is able to grow. But in fact, the opposite, right? We are in a 50 years long crisis, organic crisis, global crisis, that is for each recovery, timid recovery, there is a deeper crisis as we see right now. And we saw in 2008 and in 2001. And every time that happens, that is the best excuse for the capitalists to attack the welfare, to attack the public institutions, and to attack the conditions of the workers and the youth of this country and of the whole globe. So obviously, if it was important 100 years ago to fence off the industrialist class and to take back some of the benefits of this institution, today is even more important, because in the crisis of capitalism, it's going to be the attempts from the capitalists to use these agencies for their own interests and against ours is even more formidable. Now, obviously, all these attacks not only have an effect on the quality of the UW system and also on the attacks to the workers of UW, which we should stand shoulder to shoulder with them and connect the good fight of the working class in UW with the struggle of the whole Wisconsin working class, because it should be our fight to defend those jobs. But also, right now, the average household income of a UW student is $95,000. About 40% of the students comes from the top 20% of society. Only 1% of the students in UW come from a poor family, and only 4% of the students in UW come from the bottom 20%. So we see that this Wisconsin idea is an opposite of what it pretends to be. In fact, this $95,000 average household income for a student in Wisconsin, we must compare it with the average Wisconsin household income in Wisconsin, which is $64,000. It's a whipping $30,000 difference, so actually a 50% more of the average of a UW student versus a Wisconsin household income. So that gives you a X-ray very quickly how this is affecting the more vulnerable in Wisconsin, and the poorer and the working class disproportionately. And that is multiplied by 10 as you may for the communities that are more vulnerable, the people of color, the immigrants, especially immigrants without documents, which today is still obligated to pay 3 times, almost 4 times the tuition. You know, if somebody is resident and have citizenship or some kind of residency, is able to pay $10,000 per tuition, which is still too much for most people. And yet, if you are still living in this country and you're still working and your parents are paying taxes as you buy milk or you have payroll deduction taxes and whatnot, I mean, it's as much yours as anybody else. But yet, because if you don't have paper, if you're an undocumented student, then you are forced to pay $37,000 for tuition, which is impossible, obviously. So that is the X-ray of the Wisconsin idea and the UW system. That's what the capitalists have done with that, right? So what we say is, what we're trying to say is like in the same way that at the beginning of the last century, we have the Wisconsin idea from the progressive movement, trying to or attempting to fence off the tentacles, the corruption, the influence of the big capital. We also have at the same time the Milwaukee way, right? The Sealer socialism, as they call it, which is a movement we don't think it's exactly Marxist in terms of trying to transform society by taking power, by taking the state, by transforming radically society, which I will talk about that. But at least the Sealer movement was a movement that it was based on a class analysis. It wasn't based on the rosy idea that the state could be good, that the state actually can organize society and eliminate the contradictions between the working class and the capitalists. But well, on the contrary, in Milwaukee, there was a strong movement in the first half of the last century that was based on improving directly the living conditions of the working class, the neighborhoods, the working class neighborhoods. And it was based on the idea that ultimately we need to fight for socialism, we need to transform society. And that was not compatible with somehow like capitalism developing at the same time of these ideas, but actually it was an acknowledgement that ultimately capitalism was the problem. We see 100 years that the progressive ideal actually collapsed by a capitalist state that ultimately will first and foremost serve the capitalist class against our interests, the interests of the working class. And today we have also a choice on how to defend the UW system, how to defend the higher education, public higher education in Wisconsin. And we say to everybody who's listening that base ourselves on the Democratic Party, base ourselves on progressive politics, on the Wisconsin idea without denouncing the character of the state. If we base ourselves on the idea that we can do a broad coalition with the so-called good capitalists, it's going to end up in the same recipe that we have right now. When there is a crisis, when there is an interest of the capitalist class, we will lose the things that we have fight for so long and build with the effort of our work. And so in the same way that in the Milwaukee movement or the Sealer socialist movement happened in Milwaukee like 100 years ago, with the Marxists, we defend that we have to make the Wisconsin idea ours. We have to stop saying that it's just Wisconsin. It's our Wisconsin. It's the working class Wisconsin idea. And what it is, what we say is that we need to take ownership of the UW system, which means that we don't think that being on the hands of the state is enough, but actually should be under workers' control, under the students' control, under the workers' control of the whole Wisconsin, like unions, that students, workers of the system should come together and demand that this is our institution. Also, we say that we have to raise the taxes to those who have the most to finance a free tuition, $25 minimum wage UW system that takes care of what the workers need, instead asking them to do more sacrifices, to have a system that is more and more conducive to give to work for the capitals, but actually invert the direction of that process. Free tuition, so we can really use the UW system as a leveler, and everybody, people of color, undocumented, poor, working class, can actually easily go to high school instead of what we to higher education at UW instead of what we see right now. And obviously, and I know I'm exceeding a little bit my time, there's more things to talk, but at the end of the day, if we don't do this, if we don't put a clear program forward that is about challenging the private property, the private interest that is infiltrating every agency of our society, we have examples like we have today, where even though a public entity where about 1,500 millions are coming directly from the state and the federal government out of the 3 billion budget, who gets benefits the most is the private industry. We have the example of Epic Systems here in Dane County. Judy Faulkner now get more than $3 billion increase on her wealth. Now she is worth $6 billion during COVID. Out of what? If it's not out of her work, it's out of mining every single brain cell of UW, mining the ability of UW system to create programmers, engineers, and all kinds of workers trained in UW for her own enrichment. That's the problem of having the Wisconsin idea without a class character, without a class analysis. We, the Marxists, and I finish with these cameras and everybody who's listening, what we defend is to call everything by its name. We need a UW system, a public education that is free for us, for the working class, and that is paid by the rich. And eventually, the only way to secure this kind of system that we are fighting for is not only to take in our hands the UW administration, it's not only to raise the taxes, it's not only to denounce the class character, the capitalist character of the state, but in fact, to own the state, to do a revolution where we can boost down these antiquated, obsolete class institutions like the state of Wisconsin or the federal government, who never is going to work in our interest, and substitute it for something else, for a socialist state that is based on democracy, is based on ample participation of the population, when we can finally get this Wisconsin idea, the working class Wisconsin idea, where we can use knowledge, research, and higher education to improve the livelihood of every single person, worker, and youth in the state and in the United States. So go for socialism, and let's take and assault the state by creating a better society. Thank you.
Oh, back to me. Thank you, Alex, for that excellent introduction to the, Hi, everybody. Yeah, thank you, Alex, for that excellent introduction to the topic. I'm really looking forward to getting into that discussion. Remember to stick around for after the stream. We'll be posting a link to the Zoom discussion in the comments soon. You can come to join us in the discussion. We can talk further about the defending the Wisconsin idea. In the meantime, thank you again for checking out the stream. We are the Madison IMT. You can find our international website at Marxist.com, the website of our national center, Socialist Revolution, at socialistrevolution.org, and find more information about our local branch. Sign up for the paper or sign up for our email list and consider joining at imtmadison.org. We are seeing the link to the stream appear on the screen now. It will be in the Facebook and the YouTube comments. So looking forward to seeing you over that soon. To help make future events like this possible, please consider supporting our organization financially. You can donate to our Venmo at Ivy Geertz, IVYGEERTS. And let's see. Yeah, this was the one of the last events we're doing for the spring, but we will be coming back for more. So make sure you like our Facebook page and subscribe to us on YouTube for more updates. Thanks again for joining us. Looking forward to talking to all of you over in the discussion. So we will see you there. Until next time, this has been a production of the Madison IMT. My name is Liam. See you later. Thank you.